I took the last bus home at 11 p.m. I wish I hadn't. When I was 22, I got my first real job. It wasn't anything exciting. I had just graduated and managed to get an entry-level position at a small company in the city. It was the kind of job where you spent most of your day staring at a computer screen, answering emails, and doing whatever your manager told you to do. Still, I was proud of it. For the first time in my life, I had a proper salary coming in, and I was trying really hard to prove that I deserved the position. Because of that, I regularly stayed late. My parents would complain about it, especially because I had to take the bus home at night. But I kept telling them that the city was safe and that I was a grown man now. Most nights, I would leave around 9 or 10 p.m. There was one bus that left at around 11 p.m., and it was the last one that went anywhere near my neighborhood. I had taken it several times before. Usually, there were only a handful of people on it. The driver was always an older man who never seemed particularly friendly. He rarely spoke to passengers unless someone asked him something directly. I remember thinking he looked permanently annoyed, but I'd never had a problem with him. Then one Thursday night, I stayed at work later than usual. It was almost 11 when I finally shut down my computer. I remember looking at the clock and realizing I had about 5 minutes to reach the bus stop. I grabbed my bag and practically ran out of the building. The streets were already mostly empty. It was one of those nights when the city felt completely different after dark. The shops were closed. Most of the office buildings had their lights turned off. There were a few cars passing, but hardly anyone walking around. I reached the bus stop just as the bus was pulling in. I got on, showed the driver my pass, and walked toward the back. There were maybe 7 or 8 other passengers. I chose a seat near the middle of the bus, put my headphones on, and started listening to music. I remember feeling relieved. The hardest part of my day was over. I could sit back for the next 40 minutes and relax. A few minutes into the ride, I noticed a woman sitting several rows behind me. She was completely alone. She looked fairly normal. She was wearing a long, dark coat, and her hair was hanging down around her face. I didn't think anything of her. I only noticed her because every other passenger seemed to be doing their own thing while she was sitting completely still. I went back to listening to my music. About 10 minutes later, I heard something. At first, I thought it was part of the song playing in my headphones. It sounded like someone whispering. I took one earbud out. I heard nothing. I put it back in. A few seconds later, I heard it again. A very quiet voice, right next to my ear. I turned around. The woman was sitting 5 seats behind me. I immediately felt confused. I was almost certain she'd been farther away before. I looked around the bus. Nobody else seemed to notice anything. The woman was just sitting there, motionless. I turned back around. I tried to convince myself that I had simply miscounted the seats. Maybe she had always been there. Maybe I was tired. I put my headphones back on. A few minutes passed. Then I heard the whisper again. This time, I couldn't mistake it. Someone had whispered directly behind me. I turned around. The woman was now 4 seats behind me. I stared at her. She didn't react. She wasn't looking at me. She was just sitting there with her hands resting in her lap. I felt a strange chill run through me. I looked toward the front of the bus. The driver was staring straight ahead. I thought about saying something to him, but I felt stupid. What was I supposed to say? "Excuse me, I think that woman moved 3 seats closer to me." I decided to ignore it. I faced forward again. I kept my headphones on, but I stopped listening to the music. I was just sitting there, watching the reflection of the bus windows. A couple minutes later, I heard the whisper again. I slowly turned around. 3 seats. She was 3 seats behind me. This time, I was certain. I had been watching her. There was no way I had miscounted. She had moved. I stared at her for several seconds. She still wasn't looking at me. I felt my heart beating faster. I wanted to get up and move closer to the front, but something about the situation made me freeze. I told myself that maybe she was getting off at the same stop as me. Maybe she was simply moving toward the front because her stop was coming. That explanation made sense. At least, that's what I wanted to believe. I turned forward again. The bus continued through the empty streets. The lights inside the bus flickered once, then twice. I looked at the driver. He didn't react. I looked at the other passengers. Nobody reacted. Then I heard the whisper. Again. This time, it sounded like it came from directly behind my seat. I didn't want to turn around. I sat there for several seconds, staring straight ahead. Eventually, I forced myself to look. The woman was 2 seats behind me. I felt my stomach drop. There was no possible explanation anymore. She had moved again. I could see her clearly now. Her hands were still in her lap. Her head was slightly lowered. Her hair covered most of her face. I turned back around. I decided I was getting off at the next stop. I didn't care that it wasn't my stop. I'd rather walk home than stay on that bus. I reached for the stop button. Before I could press it, I heard the whisper. "Don't." I froze. The voice was so quiet that I almost wondered if I'd imagined it. I slowly turned around. 1 seat. She was sitting directly behind me. I could feel someone sitting there. I could hear her breathing. Or at least, I thought I could. My entire body felt frozen. I didn't know what to do. I remember staring at the driver's reflection in the front mirror. He was still driving. Then something made me look back at the woman. Her head was raised now. Her hair had moved slightly away from her face. I expected to see a normal face. Instead, there was nothing. No eyes. No nose. No mouth. Nothing. Her face was completely smooth. Just pale skin where every feature should have been. I couldn't breathe. For a few seconds, I couldn't even move. She was facing me. I knew she was facing me. But there were no eyes with which to look at me. Then her head tilted slightly to one side. And I heard that whisper again. This time, it wasn't coming from behind me. It was coming from inside my head. "You're almost home," I screamed. I don't remember exactly what happened after that. I know I jumped out of my seat and ran toward the front of the bus. I was yelling at the driver to stop. I think I hit the side of the driver's seat. The old man slammed on the brakes. The bus stopped so suddenly that I nearly fell. I grabbed the doors and screamed at him to open them. He looked at me and smiled. That was the part that scared me almost as much as the woman. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was this slow, knowing smile. Like he'd been waiting for me to finally realize what was happening. I yelled at him to open the door. He didn't say anything. He just kept smiling. Then the doors opened. I jumped off the bus and started running. I didn't look back. I ran down the street as fast as I could. I didn't even care where I was going. I just wanted to get away from that bus. After a few blocks, I finally stopped. I was completely out of breath. I turned around. The bus was gone. There were no headlights, no engine noise, nothing. I eventually made my way home. I didn't tell my parents everything. I told them I had a panic attack on the bus. I couldn't bring myself to explain the woman. It sounded insane, even in my own head. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I had the worst flu of my life. My entire body hurt. I had a fever. I couldn't eat. I couldn't even get out of bed without feeling dizzy. I ended up missing work for 3 days. My parents were obviously worried. They thought I had some kind of infection. My mother eventually called a priest from our local church. I wasn't particularly religious at the time, but I was too sick to argue. The priest came to our house that afternoon. He spoke with my parents for a while before coming into my room. He looked at me for several seconds. Then he asked me one question. "Did you take the last bus?" I remember staring at him. I asked him how he knew. He didn't answer. He simply told me to close my eyes. He said a prayer over me and placed his hand on my forehead. I don't know what happened, but that night was the first time in 3 days that I slept normally. The fever was gone the next morning. I went back to work a few days later. I never told anyone at my office what happened, and I never took the last bus again. Even if it meant waiting an hour for another route the next morning, I refused. For years, I thought maybe the whole thing had been some kind of hallucination caused by exhaustion. Maybe I had fallen asleep. Maybe I dreamed the woman. Maybe the illness afterward was completely unrelated. I've tried to convince myself of that many times. But there's one thing I still can't explain. About 6 months after the incident, I was leaving work late again. It was around 11 p.m. I was standing at the bus stop when the same bus pulled up. The same route, same number, same old driver. I froze. The driver looked at me through the windshield. And then, he smiled. I immediately walked away. I didn't even wait to see who was on the bus. I've never taken that route after 11 p.m. again. And to this day, whenever I hear someone whisper behind me on an empty bus, I don't turn around.